hero of time, Kato.
How did you come about the name Shirley Doe?
Oh boy. So I was Masahiro Panic was my first ring name. Because I wanted to be Chono from New Japan. And like I used to wear the same pants, everything. And then I was wrestling for Les Thatcher. It's like this show in the middle of a swamp. Ricky Morton was on it. That's all I remember about it. And also, they didn't tell me wrestling's. This is maybe a theme in my stuff. Is that nobody tells you stuff in wrestling. You know what I mean? You find out after the fact. Nobody told me the kid I was in with was deaf. So we had a spot where I told him to drop down, and I was going to feed up with a boot, and he just kept double crossing me on this spot. So finally, I just kicked him in the face as hard as I could because I thought he was like shooting on me. I didn't know, and his face was all bloody, and I felt bad afterwards. Someone said, "Yeah, didn't anyone tell you he was deaf?" And I was like, "No." Like the whole time, like when I was talking through moves, like he was telling me stuff, and he didn't sound like he was. So horribly embarrassing afterwards. You know?
Sure.
But I remember Les came up and talked to me, and he's like, "You're a fat dago. Why do you have a Japanese name?" And I was like, "Oh,
okay."
Yeah, and he's like, "No one's gonna buy your Japanese." And I was like, "Well, my whole gimmick is that I'm an expatriate and I don't like America." And he's like, "Nobody cares." Like no, and I was like, "Man, like that's rough." But on the other hand, I'm like, "Yeah, maybe that's right." And then PWX had a kid named John Doe who did a gimmick that he was in a mental institution. He used to come out in a body bag. And they're like, he was really good before he came to ring, they said, at being crazy, but then he was young though. He was only like in his first couple months. So he wasn't really good at, you hear this all the time. You and I have talked about this where it's like, play the gimmick, play the gimmick. He didn't know how to play the gimmick. For some stupid reason, I like playing the gimmick already. So they said, "Can you do crazy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do crazy." So I'm like, "Well, I'll be his brother, his even crazier brother." And he came up with this elaborate backstory that I was bullied and abused, and which is kind of what happened in my childhood years in school. And then, but I snapped, and they put me in a mental institution. Because my mom always told me that I would put her in Dixmont because I would drive her nuts as a kid. So that's why I'm from Dixmont Mental Institution.
Okay.
And I was thinking, like, what would be a good name with Doe? And that's when, like, Marilyn Manson had, like, the girl name, killer name, and then there was Shirley Manson and Garbage. And then I was thinking kind of like the Boy Named Sue thing with Johnny Cash. And so Shirley Doe. And I'm like, I'll do this for 3 months and go back to Master Repairing. And that was 20 years ago, maybe 21 years ago. So it's funny, though, because, like, when Logan was on, not Logan, Elias now, was on Steve Austin's show. Steve Austin was talking about it, and he's like, "I thought you were trained by a girl." And he goes, then I realized, oh yeah, he's just doing the Johnny Cash thing. And I was like, oh my God, Steve Austin gets like, yeah, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have to explain it to him. So maybe I took Les's thing to mind, where it's like, the good thing about it is, like, it's so funny. Like, the heat thing always with it is if someone yells my name, like a girl's name, they all chant it. They used to do in shows, and it was like, and I would get mad about it. It's like, why would I get mad about my name? But then I think that's the thing I always tell guys, like, don't be upset when you get heat for something, just go with it. Do you know what I mean? If you overthink why you get heat from a crowd, then it dissipates. So yeah, it just always worked. And it was like, it was memorable because they'd be like, oh, I thought you were, it just happened this week. IWA put up a poster, Ian Rotten's group, of like an old show that I was on. And someone's like, oh man, Shirley Doe wrestled Necro Butcher. I wish I could have seen that match. Someone said, and someone else posted, oh yeah, she was a really good worker. And IWA is like, he's a girl. And I was like, right after, I'm like, yes, he's not a girl. I'm like, yes, I am a dude. So, but it works. Like, people remember it. So I don't know. It just stuck. I just got stuck with it. So
You briefly touched on it.
yeah,
Training with Dory Funk.
yeah,
I mean, a legend, former NWA world champion.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
it's scary. The first lockup, I was really freaked out. I was telling the guys last time when I did a little thing with them. Here, it's like, lockups are really important to me. Nobody lockups. I never lock up anymore because all I do is brawl. But I think the first lockup in the match is so important because Dory always said it's like a shotgun. Like, when the guys hit each other, it should sound like a fight's happening. And I knew how important it was to him, and he had talked about it. So he asked the first thing of his first class. He's like, somebody come in and lock up with me. And I'm like, okay, I got to do it because nobody wanted to do it. So I rolled in, and I used to do this thing that I clap before I lock up. I don't know why, right? Mm-hmm. I thought, is it cool? Something different. I did it, and he like reared back like he was going to hit me. He's like, don't ever do that. It's like, oh,
jeez.
And then he's like, after I locked up, it was right, and he like called. He's like, hey, you know, your lockup's good. You don't have to do that extra stuff. And I was like, cool. And then from that point on, it was cool. It was weird because like nobody would really pester him for advice or like bug him about stuff and ask him a million questions. And I was like, man, I paid a lot of money to be here, and I took a week off of work or 10 days off work or whatever. Like, I should get everything out of this I can. So he would just eat lunch and he'd say, hey, if anybody wants to sit with me, and it's like, why wouldn't you want to sit with him and ask him a million questions? And like that's when I figured out how to work, because I was a babyface at the time, and I could never figure out when to make a comeback. I was good at bumping and good at making guys look good, and I think it's what happens to everyone when they start as a baby, kind of maybe, is that when you have to take it for yourself. Like at some point you have to stop getting beat up and just take your own comeback. And I didn't know how to do that. I couldn't figure it out. And I asked him, like, how do you know? Like, I can't figure it out. Like, I would just get run over. And now I'm the exact opposite. Like, if I have to remind myself, don't run over this person. Don't keep beating him, give him comebacks. And I was so worried about it. He's like, yeah, just listen to the crowd. And I was like, oh, that's such simplistic advice. The next match I was in, I heard the crowd, like, the ebbs and flow of the crowd. I'm like, oh yeah, this is where they do want me to come back. It's stupid, but it works. You know what I mean? And like sometimes like the most basic advice works. So like it was awesome though. Like I think like I credit a lot of just knowing how to tell stories and stuff came from that. Because it was like, I think I was on the right direction, but I was like this idiot savant where I was okay. And I knew kind of how to fumble my way through a story. But then how to get to a story. I never want to be one of those people though that like you've had matches with guys where they're like, we're gonna do this to get the story over, and like where it almost becomes almost like inside the actor's studio where it's like overly analyzed. It's like to me wrestling's for like little kids and for maniacs, and it's like and so you should just go out and fight, and it should be this like it's legalized violence, and it's like if you overthink it too much, and like psychology can come into it and it works, but the more you overthink it, it's like just be in the moment, and like if you overthink things, you're gonna get hurt. And like that's what I love about wrestling. Like I really can get scholarly about it and overthink about it. Obviously, you hear me blab on here, but then on the other hand, it's like the intrinsic feel of being in the moment and telling a story without knowing you're telling a story is pretty rad. It's kind of like playing D&D, but you get punched in the face. You know what I mean? You don't have to roll up a character sheet.
You brought it up a little bit earlier. Let's bring that word back, violent.
Yeah.
I have seen you take some very violent bumps and some very violent shots to the head.
Yeah.
At this point,
Yeah.
You're in your mid-40s.
Yeah.
Do you at all think or worry about your quality of life 10 or 20 years from now?
I didn't when I was younger, and I started to in my mid-30s maybe, early to mid-30s, because I drove past my house a couple times back then. It's funny because I saw somebody talk about this online, and they're like, well, he's talked about he's had these memory problems, like why does he still wrestle? They've gotten, my life is, my quality of life is very good. Like I feel healthy, other than typical soreness, neck, knee, stuff like that. But yeah, I did worry about it. I've gotten smarter. I think post Chris Benoit, I stopped taking a lot of shots to the head. I think what helped is that balls wasn't coming around anymore as much. Mahoney and our matches turned into like chair shot dances. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like, how many chair shots can you take? You know what I mean? Take stuff off the top onto a pile of chairs. But on the other hand, like I have a body that was made for doing violence upon. Like I am not built for supermodeling. I'm not built for any modeling. I'm built for getting my ass kicked and kicking people's asses. So I think I'm used to it and I like it. And it's a weird. I know that that's my talent. Is like in wrestling is the ability to take ridiculous amounts of punishment, but then give it out, but like not hurt other people. Hopefully, like I'd much rather get hurt myself than hurt somebody else. But yeah, I just like that style. I think it's because when I was a kid, I would watch World Class, and World Class was kind of boring to me until Bruiser Brody was on. And when Brody and Abdul were on, I'm like, oh man, like there's something special here. Do you know what I mean? It's like I remember Brody. They like, why did they even ring the bell in our matches? Like, why did they? Every match should have been no DQ. And then I think especially we went to every ECW show from like 94 to 96 or 97 in ECW Arena, and watching so much of that stuff, it had rub off on you, right, of that era. And it's just that's what wrestling is to me. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. I think I always tell people that you don't get to be good at taking those things without being mentally imbalanced somewhat. Do you know what I mean? It's like kind of a way of getting rid of residual aggression. And the better your life is, the worse your matches are usually. So it was like when I was like in a bad marriage and when I was depressed about work and I didn't feel like I was doing, like I was really down on myself till I went to therapy in my mid-30s, and I realized like, oh, I am actually doing pretty well at life, and I am working towards, I always felt like I wasn't living up to what I could. And I realized that life isn't about this, it's not like a video game where you hit these levels. Like there's peaks and valleys, and you have to be happy that you're doing some things. I mean, you have to find the happiness in every day. This gets really psychological. But like, I would be so upset that wrestling was my therapy, where I'm like, well, if I take this dragon screw off the apron to the floor, like, I will feel better about my life because I've done something that was really hurtful, but also that no one else can do. And like, pain was a language that I could understand, as weird as that sounds. And once I got past that, I still do it though, like, but not all the time. I think it's like figuring out, once I started to do it all the time, people expected it, and then people didn't care. But if you do it once, now I say that, and I'm going to go out and do something tonight. Like, why did you do that? That's a long answer for that. But.
Whenever I did my research, it looks like one thing I remember early in the 2000s, I think that your name was sort of synonymous with IWC. We moved forward, and near as I could tell, maybe in 2008, you left IWC. How did that come about? Your cheek twitched a bit. This might be a sore subject.
No, it's not a sore subject. I think the thing is, if you had asked me in 2008, I would have been a lot angrier about it. Because I felt like popcorn started from my anger. Just kidding. I think when I was younger in wrestling, I felt like, and in life, I think I got to this point. I think when you get older, it's not that you don't care anymore, but you don't have to be right all the time. And I felt like that if someone didn't listen to my way of doing things, I had to prove that I was right because I knew that I was right. And the older I've got, it's like I know that I'm right, but I don't have to push my worldview on somebody else's. And I think Norm had a very definite vision of what he wanted to do there, and I didn't always get along with it. But we were both going through a lot of stuff in our lives, and we're both kind of volatile personalities. And it was hard on me because I trained like the whole locker room, like almost everybody between Hentai and Troy Wards and a few other guys and myself that ran the school. So to kind of go from IWC was my life, where I was on everything but the first show in Emerald Room when Bubba owned the company, and being their champ for so long and being synonymous with it to not having it, it was really weird. And I was out of wrestling for just like 2 or 3 months. And then Quinn, I remember I was in a Kmart, and the old Super Kmart out by the airport, and so I had gotten divorced and I had no money, so I was living on a Sears credit card, and that's how I got my groceries. There was one grocery store, the one Kmart that had grocery in it, and it was that one. So I would drive 20 miles out of my way completely to get groceries for like 2 weeks, and I lived off like ramen and canned stuff. Whatever was cheap there, so that's probably why I'm even fatter now. So I wasn't living on good stuff. But Quinn called me. He was like, "Yeah, do you want to come out and wrestle here?" And I was like, I thought I was going to be done with wrestling. And I always had this theory, like Eddie Guerrero said to me once, he's like, wrestling's never going to screw you over, and it's always going to be there for you. And so that's the advice he gave me once. He's like, and it's like, women are going to screw your life up, and drugs and drinking, all these things are going to screw your life up, but wrestling will be there. And I felt like I got lied to. I felt that wrestling wasn't there for me when I needed it the most, when I was going through a lot of bad stuff in my life. And then all of a sudden, wrestling was there again. So, and now that I'm older and can see through, I'm like, yeah, I probably was hard to deal with. I was kind of pig-headed about stuff where I could have let, because it even happens now. Like I was in a conversation with someone, and someone was talking about who sang a song, and I knew they were wrong. Everybody was talking about how good they were at trivia. I'm like, I can't believe you knew who did that song. In my head, I'm like, tell everybody he's wrong. I'm like, no, that dude's having a moment, and let him have that moment. I don't have to be right. And I think that's a really hard part to get to. Maybe that comes with age. And now I realize, like, yeah, I was kind of an asshole a lot of times, or I was negative a lot of times, and maybe I should just let him get through stuff and then figure out a different way. I think getting divorced, I come back to this a couple times, but it's a way that I learned how to communicate in my life where it made me a better communicator. I had to go through that moment and through that bad part of my life, because then I learned, this is a trick I learned from it, so I'll give this to you free so it doesn't cost like $20,000 or $50,000 like it cost me for all the legal stuff, is like, when you hear something you don't understand from someone, say, this is what I heard you say. And you literally repeat it back to them, and it's like, do you mean this, or do you? And like almost literally asking someone what they mean about something and slowing the situation down, versus my old way was like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like charge in. So that was hard. They've asked me to be, I was on one show against Hentai, I think in like 2010 or 2000, like one of their anniversary shows. And they've asked a few times, but it's like, I feel like I'm in a good way, like I kind of moved past that chapter. But I was happy I was there. I'm happy I did it. It's weird. It was weird to be gone, but like everything worked out.
So, I think everybody has people that will criticize them, not like them,
Yeah.
anonymously say things about them.
Yeah.
I'm sure even you,
Yeah.
a very likable guy like you, has had people say things about you. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that you've heard that maybe you think isn't really fair?
I don't know if it's fair or not. I think it's what everybody thinks. I think that I'm old, and that my best years were 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and maybe that's true. I don't know. I never wanted to get in the position where I felt like I wasn't giving like 200% in my match, and I still feel like I give everything into every match. But I don't want to be one of those old guys that's like, hey, we're not going to take any bumps tonight, or let's take it easy tonight. I hate hearing guys say, oh, it felt like an off night. I never want wrestling to feel like an off night. I think every match you should go into, like, I mean, this is kind of metaphor. I don't mean literally, but like you should be ready to die. You should be ready to give everything to your match every time. So like I had a fan, like I know that indie board may be done, maybe come back, whatever. I had a fan on there threatened to choke and kill my ex-wife and kill all my animals because they hated me in the ring, which was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. And that's why I always check for dandruff. Someone said I had a lot of dandruff once.
Wow.
It's funny. Yeah, they said that.
That's rough.
Yeah, and they said that I was crazy from my marriage, which I was at the time. Like, I was really depressed. But, like, mostly weight stuff. But you know what? It's like, I've also realized, like, my grandfather was built the same exact way as me. He was a steel worker. And he was a strong guy. And I'm built like him. I work out. I go to the gym and I do stuff. But it's like, this is my... Like, if I had abs, like, would it make me a better worker? Probably not. I mean, that's my gimmick. I'm just a big fat devil worshiper. That's
Well,
pretty
let's-
much my legit life, right?
Let's try to turn things a little positive.
Okay. That wasn't too bad.
You have trained a lot of mainstays here in Western PA, a lot of guys. But I want to try to focus in on 3 guys.
Okay.
Let's start with first, Facade.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how training went with him and how you feel about him now.
I really like him a lot. He's I always say kid, and they're like in their 30s, 25, 30, you know what I mean? But my one ex-girlfriend used to always call them puppies. They were my little puppies, because they would always like flock around me and ask me questions. I really like, I'm trying not to say his real name. I really like Facade a lot. I think he's a great dude. Even from when he started, he tried to do, always, like, when can we do springboards? I'm like, we're going to learn how to take bumps and go in the ring first. You know what I mean? Like, he always wanted to do more, which is good. I think he's really learned how to put it all together. And the thing I really love about him is you always talk about guys like, are you willing to make that sacrifice and go that extra mile and do that stuff? And he's doing that. Like, you always hear these kids, like, they always have on Facebook, like, making towns. Like, that dude is making towns. That dude's going everywhere. Like, he'll go to India and live in a dojo and freeze his ass off and get sick and want to quit. He has a great girl here, leaves his girl behind. Do you know what I mean? And does this life. And then nobody else is doing it. Not that many dudes are doing that. It's funny because the ones that I think have done that, have made it, are the ones that always had the heart. Like, all I did was, like, they were already great wrestlers. It was like, you know how some artists say, like, well, the art was already in that piece of wood or that piece of stone? The art was already in there. All I did was just knock the first piece off of it, and they did the rest themselves. Like, I just gave them the foundation. But he's one of those guys. And, like, the most amazing story is he found a cat in Turkey, which is wherever he was at in India, and like the cat came to his dojo and stayed with him when he was 6, so he figured out how to take it home. That's a crazy. I mean, beyond being a great wrestler, that's a crazy wrestling story. But I think he's really come along.
I'll ask you the same
and his
question.
His look is amazing too now. He's
about all 3 of them.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, when you first met them, when they first started,
Yeah.
did you have an inkling? Could you have guessed?
I think with him, certain guys, yeah. So the guys I would always think that wouldn't make it, if a guy would tell me, I'm going to be the best student you ever had, I mean, he's going to wash out in 2 weeks. Like, they're going to wash out doing squats. They're going to wash out learning how to bump. The guys that, like, asked a lot of questions, that wanted to learn, and also knew how to keep their mouth shut a little bit, and, like, just did everything. Like so I would volunteer to do ring crew stuff, and he was already traveling young. Do you know what I mean? I think I could tell he would do it. And it's funny, the guys that, not that you need to be my friend, but the guys that were more friendly, and the guys that, like, if I would introduce them to my family members, they'd be like, oh, that's a really quality guy. Like, I have a big party at the end of the summer every year, and Facade's come to, like, every one. And this is not why I like him, I'm just saying. And it's funny, my mom always says, that boy with the dreadlocks is so nice. Like, he doesn't need to talk. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, he's a quality person, too. I think I know who else you're going to bring up, but of those guys, they're all quality human beings beyond being quality wrestlers, too. And I think that's the thing I was looking for in guys, where I would start 20 people, 25 people a class, and end up with 2. Do you know what I mean? End up with 1, and then just weed them out. Because I didn't want I would mostly sometimes take up to a year and a half with guys. And like Gory and Shima was like 2 years because they were 16 when they started. They couldn't wrestle until they were 18. And it's like, if you're willing to have me beat you up all the time, we were doing 3 days a week then for a long period of time and make it through, like, then you're ready. You know what I mean? I wanted guys to look like they were 6 months in when they had their first match. But yeah, with him definitely. I think it was ugly. I knew.
What about the next one? You called him Shima. We'll call him DJZ.
DJZ.